Ladies and gentlemen, you find yourself alone. No friends, no family, no one checking in, no one waiting for your call. And it feels like the end of the road, doesn't it? But what if I told you that this exact moment isn't your downfall, it's your beginning? Because the truth most men will never face is this: you don't need anyone to become everything. You see, when you're surrounded by people, you're surrounded by expectations. You're constantly caught in the net of needing to please, needing to perform, needing to belong. But when all of that is stripped away, when there's no one left to lean on you, finally meet yourself. And that is terrifying, because now there's no one to blame, no one to save you. But it is also liberating, because there's no one to stop you either. A man who walks alone becomes immune to the noise of the world. He is no longer performing. He is simply being. He builds not for applause, but from instinct. He wakes up not to impress, but to evolve. When the world is quiet, that's when a man hears the voice he's been avoiding all along, his own. And what he hears is this: you were never meant to follow. You were meant to lead yourself. Family might disown you. Friends might disappear. But that doesn't mean you've lost anything. What you've lost is a crutch. What you've gained is a spy. Because a real man doesn't need company to be complete. He is not afraid of the echo in an empty room. He is not frightened by the silence after a goodbye. He walks alone, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Aloneness is not a punishment. It's an invitation to stop waiting for support and start standing on your own soul. And the irony: when you no longer need anyone, when you are whole in your solitude, people are drawn to your presence, because strength is magnetic. The silence screams louder than noise. Here's the truth: no friends, no family, no problem. You were never abandoned. You were chosen by fate to stand alone, that when you rise, you'll know it was you, not your friends, not your parents, not your background, but you alone. That's the kind of man who becomes unstoppable. And walk, head high, no company, no cheerleader, just the rhythm of your steps and the fire in your chest, because a real man walks alone and never looks back. Solitude is not loneliness. That's one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern life. When people hear the word alone, their minds immediately conjure up images of sadness, emptiness, or failure. But that illusion has been carefully crafted by a society that depends on your dependence. From a young age, we're taught to seek validation, approval, connection. And while connection has its place, the over-reliance on others leaves you hollow inside when you're finally left alone. But the man who learns to stand in his own silence, without flinching, without fleeing, that man becomes something else entirely. Solitude, real solitude, is a mirror. It strips away everything external. No friends to reassure you, no family to reinforce your identity, no crowd to cheer for your choices, just you. And that raw exposure to yourself is where the truth begins. Most people run from it. They distract themselves with noise, entertainment, conversations that mean nothing, and relationships built on fear of being alone. But a man on the path to mastery sees solitude differently. He sees it not as a curse, but as a sanctuary. In solitude, you begin to hear your own thoughts clearly, undisturbed. You begin to see your patterns, your mistakes, your wounds, and your brilliance. There's no one else around to filter your perception. You're not acting for anyone. You're just existing, stripped down to your essence. And that kind of clarity is terrifying for those who've spent their whole lives leaning on others for direction. But for the man ready to awaken, it's the most valuable terrain he'll ever walk. Without friends, you are forced to be your own companion. You must learn to enjoy your own company, challenge your own thinking, motivate your own spirit. Without family, you are no longer defined by your past, your upbringing, your last name. You become the architect of your own story, no longer living by someone else's blueprint. Solitude forces you to take full ownership of your life. And that ownership is where freedom begins. There is a kind of wisdom that only comes when no one is watching you. When you're not trying to impress, not trying to belong, not trying to prove anything. In those moments, you stop living for the performance. You start living from your principles. And principles are forged in silence, not applause. This is why so many never reach true peace, because they never give themselves the space to find it. They are constantly caught in the gravitational pull of society's expectations, addicted to being needed, liked, accepted. But the man who walks alone discovers something profound. He discovers that solitude sharpens his instincts, his focus strengthens, his purpose crystallizes. He begins to see through illusion. He no longer needs to be told who he is. He knows. And that knowing cannot be taken away because it wasn't given to him by anyone else. Solitude teaches a man how to behold, not in a fragile, surface-level sense, but in a deep, unshakable way, because he no longer derives his worth from how others see him. He knows his worth by how he stands in the storm. And if you want to build unbreakable confidence, if you want to live a life rooted in truth rather than performance, you must first face the silence. You must let solitude show you who you are. This doesn't mean you'll never have people in your life, but it means that when they arrive, it will no longer be from a place of need, but from a place of overflow. You won't chase love. You'll become love. You won't demand respect. You'll embody it. Because a man who has made peace with solitude radiates something rare self-completeness. And the world feels that. So no, solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is the hunger for something external to fill your emptiness. Solitude is the presence of yourself, fully, deeply, honestly. It is the sacred ground where a man transforms from dependent to sovereign, from passive to powerful, from seeking light to becoming light. When you can walk alone and feel full, you're no longer chasing life, you're creating it. And that, right there, is where everything changes. Detachment sharpens clarity. It's one of life's most brutal but liberating truths. The moment you begin to step back from people, from noise, from external expectations, you begin to see. Not just the world, but yourself. Detachment isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about creating enough distance to witness things as they truly are. When a man is constantly surrounded by others, by their needs, their opinions, their energy, his vision is clouded. His thoughts are no longer his own. His decisions, though they feel personal, are shaped by what he believes others want him to do. In such a state, how can he claim to know himself? Real clarity doesn't arise when life is easy and distractions are everywhere. It arises when you're willing to walk alone, observe without needing to react, and stand still in the storm. Detachment removes the noise. It lets you strip the masks away and ask, what do I really believe? What do I truly want? Who am I without the voices around me? It's in that solitude, in that silence, that answers begin to surface, not the answers you've been told, but the answers that were buried underneath years of noise. Most people live their lives entangled, tied to relationships out of obligation, bound to routines they never question. Their minds are cluttered with half-formed beliefs, borrowed dreams, and opinions that don't belong to them. They follow paths that were never meant for them because they're afraid to step back and examine them. But detachment is the act of courageously cutting those invisible strings, not to reject others, but to reclaim yourself. When you detach, clarity emerges. In the simplest ways, you start to notice who drains your energy and who nourishes it. You begin to recognize patterns that sabotage your growth. You feel the subtle difference between what excites your soul and what merely fills your time. You stop moving out of habit and start acting from intention. This is what clarity gives you, precision. It's like wiping a foggy mirror. You finally see your reflection clearly, and that sight changes everything. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means freedom from emotional slavery. You no longer react impulsively to the world. You respond consciously. You no longer chase approval because you're no longer addicted to being seen. You realize that peace is more valuable than popularity, and that truth, even if it isolates you, is worth more than fitting in. This shift, this inner revolution, makes you dangerous in the best way, because a man who sees clearly cannot be manipulated. He cannot be distracted. He becomes immune to the cheap rewards the world dangles in front of him. Every time you remove yourself from drama, from dependency, from shallow praise, your mind becomes sharper. You begin to see the difference between movement and progress, between connection and attachment, between love and possession. That is the gift of detachment. It slices through illusion with surgical precision and exposes the core of things. And in that space, you don't just see clearly, you think clearly. Your decision-making becomes cleaner. Your path becomes simpler. You begin to say no with confidence because you're no longer driven by fear of missing out. You no longer seek validation from people who don't even understand your vision. You stop explaining yourself to those who aren't on your frequency. This is how a man becomes sovereign, not by accumulating followers or fans, but by detaching from the need to be understood. He starts walking in alignment with truth, not trends. And even though that walk is often lonely, it is light, free of weight, free of pretense. If you feel clouded, if you feel lost, if your life seems like it's being pulled in every direction, step back, detach from people, from pressure, from pretending. Create space. Let the dust settle. Let the noise die down. And in that stillness, your inner voice will return. That voice never left you. It was just drowned out. Detachment is not isolation. It is liberation. It is the beginning of seeing clearly, living honestly, and walking forward without confusion. A man who sharpens his clarity through detachment becomes something rare. A man who cannot be bought, broken, or blinded. True power thrives in silence, not in the loud declarations, not in the endless noise of opinions, not in the constant need to prove something to the world, but in the stillness where a man meets his essence. Silence is often mistaken for weakness, for invisibility, but only the weak are uncomfortable in silence. Only the ones uncertain of themselves need constant chatter, applause, or affirmation to feel alive. The man who is truly powerful has no desire to advertise his strength because he knows it. And that knowing is more potent than any speech he could ever give. When you are silent, you're not hiding. You're building. You're listening not to the chaos around you, but to the deeper wisdom within you. There is a depth to silence that noise will never understand. It's in that quiet space that focus sharpens, energy collects, and intention becomes aligned. Every man has a fire within him, but most of that energy is wasted in noise, trying to explain himself, trying to be liked, trying to be accepted. The powerful man does the opposite. He does not announce his plans. He does not reveal his process. He works in the unseen. He allows results to speak the language that words never can. Silence teaches you the art of discipline. When you're not constantly reacting, you're conserving energy. You become deliberate with your words, your moves, your time. The man who is loud is often loud because he's insecure. He wants to be noticed. He wants to be validated. But the one who is rooted, who has done the work in solitude, has no hunger for attention. His silence isn't empty. It's full of presence, awareness, and quiet dominance. In silence, there is strategy, there is patience, there is restraint. And that restraint is not suppression, it's control. Power without control is chaos, but power with silence is mastery. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to correct every misconception. You don't need to speak just because you're expected to. When you move in silence, you become unpredictable, and that unpredictability makes you unshakable. Look around at the ones who are always talking. They often reveal too much, act too soon, or crumble under pressure because they've built their identity on being seen. But the man who walks silently builds something different. He builds substance. He's not interested in performance. He's building foundations no one can see until the results become undeniable. And when they do, the world calls it sudden. But it was never sudden. It was crafted in the quiet, refined in the shadow. The loud path may get attention, but the silent path gets results. Because when you're not trying to be everything for everyone, you become exactly who you were meant to be. When you're not consumed by the external, you go deeper within. And in that depth, you find a kind of power that cannot be shaken by opinions, trends, or failures. You're no longer operating to be seen. You're operating to become. This kind of man is rare. He doesn't boast, he doesn't compete, he doesn't chase status or praise. He simply focuses on the mission, trusts the timing, and walks the path. He's not loud about his values, he embodies them. He doesn't shout about discipline, he lives it when no one is watching. His silence isn't passive, it's full of motion, but invisible to the untrained eye. Power that thrives in silence is power that lasts. It doesn't collapse when attention fades. It doesn't depend on applause. It grows slowly, steadily, and relentlessly. It is not performative, it is purposeful. If you feel the urge to prove, pause. If you feel the pressure to explain, breathe. Let your silence speak. Let your focus sharpen. Let your actions be the language of your transformation. Because the man who cultivates power in silence becomes the kind of man no one sees coming, but once he arrives, he cannot be ignored. Independence breeds mastery. That's the truth most people fear to face. Because to be truly independent means to stop waiting, to stop hoping someone else will carry the weight, fix the situation, or make the decision for you. It means you take full responsibility not just for your actions, but for your growth, your mindset, and your outcome. And in a world that teaches you to lean on others, to blend in, and to follow the rules of the tribe, independence feels radical, almost rebellious. But for the man who wants mastery, not comfort, not mediocrity, but mastery, independence is not optional. It is essential, A man who is independent is no longer controlled by external forces. He may walk alone, but he walks with purpose. He may have no one cheering him on, but he still rises early, still puts in the work, still sharpens his mind, because he understands the deeper truth. No one is coming to save him. And in that truth there is great power. Because when no one is coming, you become the one who does. You stop waiting, you start moving. Without independence, your identity is fragile. It is built on what others think, what others give, and what others allow. You live on borrowed strength, borrowed opinions, and borrowed confidence. But when you break free from that, when you say, I will stand on my own, even if I fall at first, something inside you wakes up, your thinking changes, your energy shifts. You begin to act, not from fear of rejection or desire for approval, but from the clarity of your own vision. Independence isn't about isolation, it's about sovereignty. You can have relationships, friendships, family, but you're no longer dependent on them to validate your existence. You can love, but not lose yourself in love. You can help, but not at the expense of your boundaries. Because you know who you are. You've built a relationship with your own mind, and that relationship is unbreakable. And that's where mastery begins. Because mastery is not just about skills or achievements, it's about the way you live. It's about the standard you hold yourself to when no one is watching. It's about your ability to create, to adapt, to endure, without relying on the approval or input of the world around you. Independence removes the noise and puts the responsibility directly in your hands. If you succeed, it's on you. If you fail, it's on you. That kind of accountability is heavy, but it's also the birthplace of greatness. You see, dependence feels safe at first. There's comfort in being told what to do, where to go, and who to be. But that comfort comes at a cost. It dulls your instincts. It keeps you small. It keeps you looking outside of yourself for permission to live boldly. Independence, on the other hand, demands that you lead, that you carve your path, that you face your fears without a shield. And when you begin to live like that, mastery is inevitable. Because you no longer waste energy blaming others. You no longer wait for the world to be perfect. You realize that the only thing you truly control is yourself, your focus, your discipline, your choices. And that realization changes everything. It turns confusion into clarity. It turns struggle into strength. It turns delay into movement. A man who has claimed his independence becomes unstoppable. Not because he has everything figured out, but because he's willing to walk forward regardless. He doesn't need ideal conditions. He doesn't need applause. He builds quietly, patiently, relentlessly. And through that process, he becomes a master not just of a craft, but of his own life. If you find yourself waiting for support, for understanding, for the perfect moment, understand this. Your freedom is not out there, it's within. And it starts the moment you stop depending on the world and start depending on the fire within you. Independence breeds mastery because it removes every excuse. It forces growth. It demands evolution. And the man who embraces it becomes what most men fear to become: self-made, self-led, and untouchable. Silence creates mystery, and mystery holds power. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop broadcasting your every move, and stop seeking recognition, you become unpredictable. And that unpredictability is magnetic. In a world addicted to oversharing, a quiet man becomes a paradox. People can't figure him out, and that confuses them. They don't know what he's thinking, what he's planning. or how much he actually knows, and that uncertainty gives him the upper hand, because mystery is leverage. What others don't know, they can't control. What they can't read, they can't manipulate. We've been trained to believe that transparency equals trust, that being open is always virtuous. But what that really creates is vulnerability without discernment. When you constantly reveal your thoughts, emotions, and goals to everyone, you give away your power. You let the world shape your mind before it's even fully formed. Silence, on the other hand, guards your energy. It gives you space to observe without being observed, to act without being predicted, to move without being followed. A man who moves in silence doesn't announce his growth, he lets it become obvious. He doesn't declare his next step. He takes it and lets the world react. He doesn't expose his battles, he endures them, wins them, and walks forward stronger without explanation. That silence creates an aura that others feel but can't define. It provokes curiosity, respect, sometimes even fear. Because what people can't understand, they can't control. And what they can't control, they often admire or fear in equal measure. There's something powerful about not being understood. It means you're not easy to categorize, not easy to predict, and definitely not easy to dismiss. Mystery disrupts people's assumptions. It keeps them guessing. And in a world obsessed with speed, attention, and noise, the silent man becomes a mystery worth watching. He carries a calm confidence. He doesn't need to compete because he knows that silence builds strength beneath the surface. He doesn't seek to impress, he seeks to impact. And impact requires no announcement. Mystery also protects your peace. When you stop explaining your every move, you stop inviting unnecessary opinions. You stop opening doors for doubt, criticism, or envy to enter. You protect your vision. While it's still fragile, still growing, you keep your momentum intact. Because not everything sacred should be shared, especially with people who haven't earned the right to hear it. The man who embraces mystery also becomes a better observer. While others speak, he listens. While others post, he plans. While others react, he reflects. That reflective nature sharpens his mind. He starts to notice what others miss. He starts to read between the lines. And because he's not busy trying to be seen, he's focused on what matters. Alignment, intention, execution. It's not that he's antisocial or withdrawn. He simply values his inner world more than the noise outside. He's not hiding. He's honing. And when he speaks, people listen. Because they know he's not speaking to impress. He's speaking from depth, from experience, from truth. His words carry weight because they come from silence, not from performance. Mystery also creates boundaries without confrontation. When you're silent about your growth, people naturally step back. When they can't access you the way they used to, they start respecting your space more. You don't have to cut people off with loud declarations. You simply become less available, less reactive, more focused. And that shift speaks volumes without saying a word. Understand this. You don't owe the world your transparency. You don't owe anyone a play-by-play of your life. Your silence is not emptiness, it's containment. It's power concentrated. It's strategy in motion. And when used wisely, it becomes your greatest weapon. A mysterious man is not feared because he's dangerous. He's feared because he cannot be read. And in a world where everyone is trying to be known, he stands apart by being unknowable. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. Let your silence confuse them. Let your growth surprise them. Let your mystery speak louder than words ever could. Walking alone forges inner strength that cannot be taught by comfort or companionship. When a man chooses the solitary path, not because he has no other option, but because he recognizes its necessity, he begins to discover a deeper, unshakable version of himself. There is something sacred about isolation, something that sharpens the spirit and chisels the character. Alone, you are stripped of distractions. You are no longer defined by who walks beside you. There is no one to mirror, no one to lean on, and no one to validate your steps. And in that raw silence, you begin to meet the version of yourself you never knew existed. The one forged in stillness, in self-reliance, in grit. When you walk alone, you start carrying the full weight of your choices. There's no one to blame and no one to hide behind. And that is where strength begins, not in being surrounded, but in being responsible. You stop expecting others to understand your vision because you realize they weren't meant to. It's yours. And because it's yours, you carry it alone. But with every solitary step you take, something shifts within you. You develop resilience that can't be borrowed. You build a kind of toughness that doesn't announce itself, but lives in how you show up every day, with or without applause. Solitude teaches you the art of endurance. When no one checks in on you, you learn to check in on yourself. When there's no shoulder to lean on, you learn to stand taller. You stop waiting for help. You stop hoping someone will come along and give you permission to rise. You realize that no one is coming, and that realization, though heavy at first, is the most empowering truth you'll ever embrace. Because once you accept that it's all on you, you begin to create strength from within, not from outside approval. Alone, you hear the whispers of your soul louder. You begin to notice the thoughts that you had been too distracted to face, the fears, the dreams, the unresolved questions. Solitude forces you to confront them all. It forces you to look inward instead of outward. And through that introspection, you develop clarity. You begin to see your path, not as the world sees it, but as you feel it. And the more you trust that inner compass, the more your steps align with your purpose. A man who walks alone becomes immune to the fear of loneliness. He stops chasing company for the sake of comfort. He stops needing to be seen, heard, or understood. His sense of identity no longer comes from the tribe, but from his own spirit. And that makes him powerful, because he is whole. Whole without others, whole in silence, whole in the unknown. People fear being alone because it exposes their insecurities. It reveals how much they've depended on others to feel valuable. But the man who has walked through the valley alone has faced his shadows and befriended them. He's suffered in silence and turned that suffering into strength. And because of that, he cannot be shaken. He does not cling. He does not beg. He does not compromise his soul just to fit in. When you've walked alone, you realize that solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. It teaches you patience, discipline, and the ability to rely on your own mind and instincts. It makes your wins more meaningful, because you know how much you endured to earn them. And when people finally see your light, they'll call it subtle. They won't understand that it was built in the darkness alone, step by step, day by day. And so don't fear the solitary path. Embrace it. Let it stretch you, break you, rebuild you. Let it burn away the parts of you that were never real to begin with. Let it teach you that you never needed the crowd to be complete. What you needed was to be alone long enough to remember who you are. Walking alone doesn't make you weaker. It makes you focused. It makes you dangerous. It makes you sovereign. Because once you've discovered your own strength in silence, no one can take it from you. And that is the kind of power that cannot be faked. It is earned alone.
In the quiet solitude of being alone, many discover a strength they had never imagined possible. Society often teaches us to equate solitude with loneliness, seeing loneliness as something to be avoided, something empty. But perhaps being alone is not the absence of company, but the presence of ourselves, a journey into the heart of who we truly are, beyond the noise and the constant need for validation. Being alone can feel unsettling in a world that champions connection, productivity, and constant interaction. However, solitude isn't an absence of companionship or distraction, rather. It's a profound presence, a state in which we become acutely aware of our inner world, with all its vastness and depth. This awareness is often obscured by the relentless demands of daily life, where our minds are continually directed outward, focused on tasks, relationships, and responsibilities. Solitude offers us a rare chance to reverse this direction, to look inward, and to explore the terrain of our thoughts, emotions, and aspirations without the noise and judgments of the outside world. Many people misunderstand solitude as loneliness. They equate being alone with being lonely, feeling that solitude is a space of emptiness devoid of purpose or warmth. But loneliness and solitude are two very different experiences. Loneliness is often a feeling of lack, a yearning for connection and companionship that isn't present. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice of space we create to be with ourselves. In solitude, we aren't longing for anything because we have chosen to spend time with our own presence. It's in this chosen state that we find a sense of fullness, a richness that reveals itself in the quiet moments when there is nothing pressing to achieve or prove. In solitude, we encounter ourselves without the filters we tend to use around others. We are no longer performing roles or living up to expectations, consciously or unconsciously. Instead, we come face to face with our true thoughts and feelings. These quiet moments allow us to connect with a sense of self that goes beyond labels, titles, or the validation of others. Alone, we become aware of the subtle movements within our minds, the fears that linger, the dreams we've set aside, and the hopes that we carry. This process can be challenging, as it often brings up hidden insecurities, memories, or regrets that we've buried under layers of distraction. Yet by facing them, we gain insight and grow in ways that are simply not possible when we're constantly surrounded by others. Furthermore, solitude provides a unique space for creativity and inner clarity. Without the influence of external voices and opinions, we are free to explore ideas and perspectives that are entirely our own. In solitude, we have room to experiment, to envision, and to engage in self-reflection. Many people find that their most inspired thoughts arise in moments of solitude because there is no one to judge or steer them. They are free to tap into their unique visions, passions, and creative impulses. It's in these quiet spaces that we often gain clarity on what truly matters to us and understand our values, aspirations, and purpose. Solitude also brings a sense of resilience, for when we become comfortable in our own company, we're no longer dependent on others to validate our worth or fill our time. We become more self-sufficient, realizing that our contentment is not reliant on constant social interaction or approval. In this way, solitude reveals itself as a profound teacher, showing us that strength is not found in our ability to be surrounded by others, but in our capacity to be content and fulfilled in our own presence. This is the essence of solitude, a space of self-acceptance, creativity, and quiet strength that sustains us, regardless of who is or isn't by our side. Embracing solitude is often viewed as an unusual act in a world that values connection, social success, and constant interaction. Yet, solitude can be a powerful path to inner strength and self-discovery. By choosing to be alone, we create a sacred space to reflect, to grow, and to listen to the quieter voices within ourselves that often go unheard in the company of others. In solitude, we aren't isolated, rather we are present with ourselves in a way that invites insight and growth. The process of embracing solitude requires a willingness to face our innermost thoughts and emotions without distraction. Many people avoid solitude because it exposes the raw and often uncomfortable aspects of their inner lives, insecurities, unfulfilled desires, and unresolved emotions. These hidden facets can be unsettling, as they often reflect parts of ourselves we may prefer to ignore or deny. Yet it's precisely in facing these shadows that we gain the courage to accept ourselves as we are. By allowing ourselves to sit with discomfort, we strengthen our emotional resilience and learn to weather life's challenges from a place of inner stability. In solitude, we come to understand that we are our own most reliable source of strength. Without the constant input of others, we realize that we don't need external validation to feel whole or secure. Solitude teaches us that our worth doesn't fluctuate with others' opinions or approval. It's intrinsic and unchanging. This realization brings a profound sense of self-reliance, a trust in ourselves that deepens with each moment we spend alone. We learn to depend on our inner resources, recognizing that we have the strength to support ourselves through any situation. Solitude fosters an independence that is both empowering and liberating. It frees us from the need to constantly seek companionship or reassurance, allowing us to make choices based on our own values and desires rather than external expectations. In solitude, we are free to pursue our interests, reflect on our goals, and understand what genuinely fulfills us without interference. This independence grants us clarity on our true path, as we no longer feel pressured to conform to societal norms or others' demands. Embracing solitude as strength also nurtures our creativity and intuition. In solitude, without the usual distractions, our minds have the freedom to wander and explore. We can tap into our creativity unhindered by others' judgments or opinions. It's often during moments of solitude that our most inspired ideas and revelations arise. Free from outside influence, we can approach problems with a fresh perspective, allowing our natural intuition to guide us toward solutions that resonate with our core. Finally, solitude helps us cultivate a deeper, more compassionate relationship with ourselves. When we're alone, we learn to be patient and understanding with our own struggles. We develop self-compassion, a gentle acceptance of our imperfections. Instead of judging or criticizing ourselves, we come to appreciate our unique strengths and acknowledge our vulnerabilities as a natural part of being human. This self-compassion is the cornerstone of true strength, allowing us to face life's challenges with resilience and grace. In embracing solitude, we come to recognize it not as a void, but as a sanctuary, a space where we find the strength to be ourselves, where we can grow in self-acceptance, independence, and creativity. The power of solitude lies in its ability to reconnect us with our authentic selves, reminding us that we are whole and complete, regardless of who is or isn't around us. Self-reliance is a quality that goes beyond mere independence. It's an inner strength that allows us to navigate life with resilience, clarity, and confidence. When we cultivate self-reliance, we aren't simply standing alone, we're nurturing a deep trust in our ability to handle whatever life brings our way. This journey towards self-reliance often fosters inner growth, pushing us to explore who we truly are without the influence or validation of others. One of the first steps in developing self-reliance is understanding our own needs, values, and desires. In a world where we are often told what we should want or how we should behave, self-reliance means tuning into our inner voice, discovering our unique perspectives, and setting our own direction. This process requires honest self-reflection and an openness to facing truths about ourselves that may be uncomfortable. By learning what truly matters to us, we begin to build a life that aligns with our values rather than living according to others' expectations. Self-reliance also encourages us to take responsibility for our own happiness and fulfillment. It is easy to fall into the trap of believing that we need others to provide us with a sense of purpose or joy. However, when we rely on external sources for our well-being, we become vulnerable to the fluctuations of our relationships and circumstances. True self-reliance involves looking inward to cultivate contentment, seeking joy in our own company, and finding purpose in our personal goals and passions. By doing so, we become less affected by external changes and more rooted in a stable sense of self. Inner growth through self-reliance also involves embracing challenges as opportunities for personal development. Life is filled with difficulties, and often our first instinct is to seek help or reassurance from others. While support from loved ones is valuable, learning to face challenges on our own can be incredibly empowering. When we tackle problems independently, we develop resilience, learning to trust our instincts and abilities. Each difficulty we face becomes a stepping stone toward greater self-confidence as we recognize our capacity to adapt, learn, and overcome. Self-reliance fosters a strong sense of personal freedom. When we are self-reliant, we are not bound by the need for approval or validation from others. We become free to make decisions based on our own judgment, pursuing paths that may be unconventional or unpopular, but are true to our inner selves. This freedom allows us to live authentically, embracing our individuality without fear or hesitation. We become more comfortable taking risks and exploring new avenues, knowing that our sense of self-worth isn't tied to anyone else's opinions. Developing self-reliance also deepens our emotional intelligence and understanding of ourselves. In becoming self-reliant, we cultivate a relationship with our inner world, learning to identify and manage our emotions without always turning to others for support. This process encourages self-awareness as we become attuned to our emotional responses and the patterns in our thoughts and behavior. Through this awareness, we can make conscious choices about how we respond to life's events, fostering a sense of inner peace and stability that enhances our well-being. Self-reliance, ultimately, is a path to inner growth, because it challenges us to embrace all aspects of ourselves, the strengths, the weaknesses, and everything in between. It encourages us to become self-sufficient, not out of pride or isolation, but from a deep sense of knowing that we are whole and capable in our own right. Each step toward self-reliance strengthens our inner foundation, making us more resilient, adaptable, and grounded. By cultivating self-reliance, we tap into a source of strength that is enduring and ever-present, a source that grows as we do. This journey is one of continual growth, as each experience, challenge, and insight deepens our connection to ourselves. Through self-reliance, we don't just become stronger, we become more complete, more authentic, and more at peace with who we are. Detachment from external validation is a powerful step toward authentic living and inner freedom. In a world where so much emphasis is placed on approval, recognition, and social affirmation, it's easy to fall into the habit of seeking our worth from outside sources. We measure ourselves by others' opinions, letting their judgments and expectations shape how we view ourselves and define success. Yet true freedom comes when we release ourselves from the need for external validation, allowing our sense of self-worth to stem from within rather than from the praise or criticism of others. Detachment from external validation doesn't mean we stop valuing feedback or become indifferent to others. Rather, it's about shifting our primary source of validation from external opinions to internal affirmation. By looking inward, we begin to find a stable, grounded sense of worth that isn't easily shaken by the judgments of others. This internal validation allows us to honor our unique qualities and trust our choices, even when they go against popular opinion or societal expectations. We become guided by our values and principles rather than the shifting tides of approval or disapproval from others. A crucial part of this detachment process is learning to distinguish between constructive feedback and mere opinion. Not all criticism is useful, and not all praise is accurate. Detachment from external validation means developing the discernment to recognize when feedback is helpful for our growth and when it's simply a reflection of others' subjective perspectives. When we're no longer driven by the need for approval, we can evaluate feedback more objectively, taking what serves our development and letting go of what doesn't align with our true selves. Letting go of the need for external validation also fosters a greater sense of personal freedom and authenticity. We no longer feel compelled to conform to expectations that don't resonate with us or to wear masks that please others. Instead, we become free to express ourselves as we truly are, without fear of judgment or the need for affirmation. This authenticity not only brings us closer to ourselves, but also draws people toward us who appreciate us for who we genuinely are, not for who we pretend to be. Embracing a life free from the need for external validation also brings a profound sense of inner peace. When we are no longer preoccupied with how we appear to others, we gain mental and emotional space to focus on what truly matters to us. Our minds become less cluttered with worries about others' perceptions, and we're able to invest our energy in pursuits that align with our passions and values. This clarity allows us to live more intentionally, creating a life that feels fulfilling and true, rather than one designed to impress or gain approval. Detaching from external validation can be challenging, as it often requires facing fears of rejection, failure, or criticism. However, each step we take towards self-affirmation builds resilience, enabling us to trust ourselves more deeply. The journey toward independence from external validation may be gradual, but with each experience we grow stronger, more self-assured, and less dependent on others for our sense of awe. Fear often arises from the mind's attempt to protect us from perceived danger. This protective mechanism has been crucial for survival, helping us avoid physical threats. However, in modern life, fear often stems not from physical risks, but from emotional and psychological uncertainties, such as the fear of failure, rejection, or the unknown. These fears are largely based on imagined scenarios, what could happen, rather than what will happen. When we recognize that many of our fears are rooted in projections and assumptions, we can begin to question them rather than blindly accepting them as truths. Facing fear requires us to examine it closely, to understand what it's trying to tell us, and to separate genuine concerns from imagined ones. This process of examination often reveals that the things we fear are not as insurmountable as they initially appear. For example, the fear of failure is common. Yet when we delve deeper, we may realize that failure itself isn't as devastating as we might think. Failure can be a teacher, offering insights and lessons that lead to growth and improvement. By shifting our perspective, we can see that the fear of failure isn't a reason to avoid trying, it's an opportunity to embrace the learning that comes from experience. Overcoming fear also involves building resilience, the capacity to face challenges and recover from setbacks. Each time we confront a fear, even in small ways, we build this resilience. We prove to ourselves that we are capable of moving through discomfort and uncertainty. This resilience becomes a foundation upon which we can tackle bigger fears in the future. By repeatedly stepping out of our comfort zones, we gradually desensitize ourselves to fear, making it easier to confront challenges with a sense of calm and confidence. One powerful way to overcome fear is by taking incremental steps toward the things that intimidate us. When a fear feels overwhelming, breaking it down into smaller, manageable actions can make it feel less daunting. For instance, if speaking in public is a source of anxiety, we might start by speaking up in small groups before gradually moving to larger audiences. Each small victory builds confidence and erodes the power that fear holds over us. The act of facing fear also deepens our understanding of ourselves. Each fear we confront reveals something about our values, our desires, and our limits. It shows us where we are still holding back and where we have room to grow. By engaging with our fears, we not only become more courageous but also more self-aware. We gain insights into what truly matters to us, as well as what we're willing to endure to achieve our goals. Lastly, overcoming fear opens us to new possibilities and experiences. When we let go of the fears that hold us back, we create space for new opportunities and growth. Fear often acts as a barrier, limiting what we believe we can accomplish. By pushing through it, we expand our horizons and discover that we are capable of far more than we once thought. The things that once felt out of reach become attainable, and we learn to trust our own strength. Each time we face fear and move beyond it, we are transformed. Our resilience, courage, and self-belief grow, reshaping our sense of who we are and what we can achieve. Fear no longer confines us. Instead, it becomes a stepping stone, a catalyst for growth, and a testament to our courage and inner strength. In facing and overcoming fear, we find the freedom to pursue a life that is true to ourselves, unencumbered by the limitations of our own minds. Learning to value authentic connections is a transformative journey, one that enriches our lives with a sense of depth, understanding, and fulfillment that superficial relationships cannot provide. In a world where quick exchanges and fleeting interactions are common, authentic connections stand out for their genuine nature. These connections are based on mutual respect, trust, and a sincere appreciation for one another's individuality. Valuing authentic relationships requires us to look beyond surface-level interactions, to seek meaningful connections that resonate with our inner selves and provide a true sense of companionship. Authentic connections are often rooted in honesty and vulnerability. In these relationships, we can be ourselves without fear of judgment or rejection. Authenticity invites us to drop the masks we may wear around others and to embrace our true selves, including our flaws and insecurities. This level of openness fosters a deep sense of trust, allowing both individuals to feel safe and understood. When we value authenticity, we are no longer trying to impress or win approval. Instead, we're focused on creating a space where both people can grow, learn, and support each other. This willingness to be vulnerable is key to building connections that are not only strong but also resilient over time. One of the challenges in forming authentic connections is the tendency to seek validation through social interactions. Inauthentic relationships often arise when we feel the need to please others or meet societal expectations, sacrificing our own values or desires for the sake of fitting in. When we prioritize authenticity, however, we no longer feel the need to mold ourselves to gain acceptance. Instead, we're able to approach relationships with honesty, connecting with people who appreciate us for who we truly are. This shift allows us to attract individuals who share our values and perspectives, forming bonds that feel natural rather than forced. Authentic connections also deepen our empathy and understanding. In genuine relationships, we take the time to listen, to truly hear one another's stories, and to appreciate each person's unique journey. This level of empathy is rare in surface-level interactions, where conversations may only scratch the surface of what truly matters. Valuing authentic relationships means being willing to support others through both joys and challenges. By cultivating this depth of understanding, we create a foundation of trust that can withstand the ups and downs of life. Authentic relationships give us a safe space to express our thoughts and emotions, fostering a level of connection that provides both comfort and encouragement. In valuing authentic connections, we also learn the importance of quality over quantity. It's not the number of friends or acquaintances we have that matters, rather it's the depth of the bonds we share. Genuine relationships are often fewer in number, but they carry a profound sense of meaning and fulfillment. When we prioritize authentic connections, we invest time and energy in nurturing relationships that bring joy and enrichment to our lives. This focus on quality allows us to build a support network that feels reliable and meaningful, offering a sense of belonging that transcends mere social interactions. Learning to value authentic connections also brings us closer to ourselves. As we build relationships based on honesty and mutual respect, we are reminded of the importance of being true to who we are. Each authentic relationship acts as a mirror, reflecting our values, strengths, and areas for growth. In the presence of others who accept us as we are, we gain the confidence to continue on our own path, strengthened by the knowledge that we are appreciated for our true selves. Valuing authentic connections transforms the way we experience relationships. We come to realize that the most meaningful connections are those that nurture our growth, support our dreams, and encourage our self-expression. These relationships enrich our lives, not because they meet external expectations, but because they resonate with our inner selves. In valuing authenticity, we create a life filled with connections that bring genuine joy fulfillment, and a sense of belonging that stays with us through all of life's seasons. In the end, valuing authentic connections is about embracing relationships that allow us to be our truest selves. These connections, rooted in trust, empathy, and mutual respect, are the ones that enrich our lives beyond measure. As we learn to prioritize quality over quantity, we cultivate bonds that bring genuine fulfillment, support, and understanding. By letting go of superficial expectations and seeking depth in our relationships, we surround ourselves with people who see us, value us, and encourage us to grow. In choosing authenticity, we invite a profound sense of belonging into our lives, a connection, not just with others, but also with our own essence. Through these meaningful relationships, we experience a life of richer purpose, warmth, and genuine joy.